Well, hello and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Tracy. We are a homesteading, homeschooling family. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys our experience using the Good and the Beautiful curriculum, as well as I will be sharing with you some of the other things that we used in our homeschool this last year. Now, we still have a little bit left in our homeschool for this year. We've just got a few lessons left. But I wanted to sit down and talk to you guys about our experience using the Good and the Beautiful. We use the Good and the Beautiful for pretty much every subject in our homeschool this last year. And you guys, it was awesome. All right, so I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of a backstory into our homeschooling journey. So I had originally started out homeschooling our oldest, Aaliyah, when she was in kindergarten. We knew that we were going to be moving in the middle of the school year. And so we just decided that instead of making her switch schools, that we were just going to homeschool her and try to keep everything just nice and easy and stress-free for her. So I homeschooled her through kindergarten. For the next couple years, she ended up attending a public school. A little fun fact is that I ended up getting a position at the school, which was really awesome because I was able to maintain the same schedule as the girls. But then when the pandemic hit and we all came home, we were struggling to get through some of the assignments that the school had sent. The teachers had done a fabulous job. Like, don't get me wrong, like they did a fabulous job getting packets and materials and things sent home for the kids, but it was rough. And in the midst of all of that, I just noticed that there were some deficits, that the kids were struggling through things that they shouldn't have been struggling through, that they were missing basics of their education, and it was very apparent that we needed to do something about it. So in the fall, when school ended up starting back up, we just decided that we had enough and we were going to homeschool the girls. I ended up coming across a program that was a free program put on by some people who, I mean, they did a fantastic job getting all the material, and their website was really well set up and everything was really accessible and easy. But everything else was online. It was accessing websites after website after website after website. And I didn't like that all the lessons were online. And a lot of lessons utilized games, which I found the kids getting kind of like sucked into, and then it was hard to get them to move on to the next thing that they needed to work on. And so we ended up finishing up the school year with that. The girls did really good with it. Like I said, the program was really well put together, but I just didn't like that it was all online. At the end of the school year, I started researching different curriculums, different options and resources out there for the girls that were more literary based and bookwork style. There are so many great options out there, but some of them are ridiculously expensive. And I understand that you can't put a price on education, but at the same time, it has to be affordable. One subject that I found for Aaliyah, and it was just one subject for the year, was like $300. And I know that that program is fantastic, but I just could not justify spending $300 on just one subject. And I have two kids and multiple subjects that I was shopping for. I ended up coming across an ad for the Good and the Beautiful, and I was curious and I checked them out, and I fell in love. Just as the title says, the Good and the Beautiful, that is what I seen. I seen really well put together curriculum that was beautiful and engaging. Some of the other curriculum that I had found, you know, that was $300, $400, $500, it was not visually appealing. It just didn't have any spark. But the Good and the Beautiful's curriculum, it does. Like, it has a spark. It brings in creativity and it brings in, seriously, just beautifulness. I ended up showing the girls and they were pretty intrigued. So on the website, The Good and the Beautiful offers assessment tests for figuring out where to place your children. So the girls went through the placement tests for the subjects that had them, and we got the girls placed where they needed to be, and I ended up ordering it. One thing to know about the Good and the Beautiful's levels is that they are about one level above what is in public schools. So for instance, a level 3 in the Good and the Beautiful is about equivalent to a 4th grade public school. If you're going to use the Good and the Beautiful, I highly recommend doing the placement tests. It will save you a lot of time and a lot of heartache on trying to figure out where your kids need to be. As I said before, I'm going to be sharing with you guys everything that we used from the Good and the Beautiful, plus a few things that we also used this school year. I'm going to go through it by subject. And I'm going to start out with language arts. This last year for language arts, the girls worked on a level K from the Good and the Beautiful and a level 3 from the Good and the Beautiful. Now, one thing with the Good and the Beautiful language arts that I absolutely love is everything that it incorporates. The language arts courses incorporate literature, grammar and usage, punctuation, art, geography, spelling, vocabulary, and writing. And that is truly what I love about the language arts program. Like, we do not have to do separate geography. We do choose to do some separate geography as in game schooling and things like that, but we don't have to do a separate subject just for geography. And the art in here is gorgeous. So they do little art studies in here. Here's another example of some of the art that we studied in this course. And then this is an example of an art project that she got to do. And then for geography, here's an example of her doing some writing and reading and learning about Greenland. And then this particular lesson back here, she did some editing on an article about Spain. And then she did some geography work. For Avery's level K, there was some art study as well. And here are a couple examples of those. She didn't have as much for geography, but here's an example of one of the lessons that was working on the United States. With the language arts courses, they do come with some extras that are incorporated into the lessons. And so she had a personal reader with hers and then a book of poems. With Avery's language arts, we had some phonics flashcards that we used. We also have these little books that I ended up cutting out and stapling together that correlated with the lessons. It is suggested in the course to use the beginner book packs, and at first I didn't think that that was needed, but as we got further into the course, I decided that I should maybe order a couple and check them out, and I'm glad that I did. I probably should have ordered the first 2 sets, but I didn't. I ended up just getting these last 2, and they definitely have made a difference. All of the books in here use words that they are learning in the course, and so it just helps them boost that knowledge that they're learning in the course. We use these handwriting books. We had level 1 and level 3 for the girls. They love these things. They're awesome. So I looked previously for some handwriting for the girls, and I just didn't find anything that I loved out there. And then I seen the handwriting on the Good and the Beautiful's website, and I fell in love, and I knew that the girls would really like them. My girls are really artistic, and one thing that they really enjoy with these is that not only do they have the lessons to practice their handwriting, but they have activities at the bottom or incorporated somewhere on the page that they get to color, they get to draw, they get to create, you know, like numbers stuff. So it's another way for them to practice the fine motor skills besides just doing the handwriting. Here's a couple examples of Avery. So she had to follow some lines, color some stuff. In here she had to add in some ducks and some of her own flowers. So it's a way for them to be creative while also completing their lesson. Now moving on to math, the girls did level 3 and level 1 for math. Avery actually finished her course already, and she's moved on to the next one. Everything in here is just beautifully done and it's well put together. Math is taught in a spiral style teaching. So you hit on a couple of things and then you move on and you learn a few more and then you circle back to it. At the beginning of the lesson, there's generally a little bit of a mental math section. Then I go through and I teach her what we're learning about for the day, and then there's a review and generally a lesson practice. And same with Aaliyah's, there's a mental math section up here. I teach her the lesson, she does a lesson activity, and then she moves on to review of material that she's already learned previously. So one of the things that I really like about the Good and the Beautiful Math is that not only are they learning the math facts, but they are learning facts about things in our world. And how the Good and the Beautiful does this is that it has the student follow along a couple of characters within the book. So the characters change throughout the course, and they're generally from different parts of the world. In Aaliyah's book, she had followed a couple characters from, I believe it was Australia. She's followed a couple characters, I think, from China. So for instance, in this particular lesson, she is learning about metric length conversions, and she is learning it by following the two characters, Winnie and her brother Tambe, who live in Uganda. So that's what I appreciate about what the Good and the Beautiful did with their math, is that they are not only teaching the math facts, but the children are also learning facts about different countries and about different ways that other people in this world live through their math course. These two levels of math had extra components that were needed for some of the lessons, and the Good and the Beautiful have put them in these really nice wood boxes, so everything's contained that they need. So I'm just going to go through and show you, for example, what Avery had in hers. Don't mind the beautiful artwork that the baby has done, but this box right here contains the front panel that has a clock that Avery gets to practice her time with. So when I take the lid off, there is a magnetic whiteboard on the back, which is used with shapes that stick straight to it. So some of the lessons have her building different things using the shapes and the whiteboard. So in her math box, she has extra shapes. She has a 6-sided dice, a left and right dice, little boats with numbers on them that are used for certain lessons. She has clocks for practicing telling time, and then there's some plastic coins for learning about money. So that's just an example of what's in hers. Aaliyah's box is kind of similar. She has a whiteboard on the back of hers. She has this dry erase board that has an array mat and some stuff to be able to practice calendar work and temperature. And then she has, I don't know, her box is a little bit of a mess, but she has capacity dice, some game pawns, because some of her lessons require her to play a couple games by herself or with me. And then she has a 6-sided and a 10-sided dice, some of the same magnetic shapes. And then she has a retractable tape measure. One thing that is really important to me in our school day is that the kids have things for independent work. Because the math and the language arts lessons require me to teach the girls the first part of their lesson before they move on to do their work independently, while I am helping one child, I would like the other child to be working on something. And so if I have not already previously helped that child, then they need to be working on independent work. And so that's where their handwriting book comes into play, or I have some of these extra math worksheets for them to do. These are Aaliyah's. She's got multiplication and division, but inside of them they just have pages of multiplication and division facts, and Avery has subtraction and addition. So if they need something to work on while waiting for me, that is an option for them. Math and language arts are the two subjects that the girls do independently. Everything else they learn together. And that includes history, science, and art. For this school year, I did purchase a couple of the science units from The Good and the Beautiful. We really did enjoy them. They are very well put together. The first two that we did were Kingdoms and Classifications and Ecology, and we are currently working on Mammals right now. The Good and the Beautiful is revising some of their subjects, and they have been revising some of their science units. And I just seen today that they have redone the Kingdoms and Classification. And I'm kind of bummed because the new edition looks fantastic. I got this spiral bound and I had covers put on it. I'll show you with the Mammals unit because I have not got that spiral bound yet. It comes all loose leaf like this. And so what you do is you pull out the things that need to be printed, the things that need to be cut out, and then you're left with the rest of this, which like these two units I had spiral bound. It was like $4 to get this done. A couple of examples of what these particular science units came with were some vocabulary terms. The ecologies had little booklets that I cut out and stapled and put together that had little cards that incorporated into some of the lessons. So these were just little things that I have cut out, and we used. Here are a couple of examples of some of the printable worksheets that we had. This one had a booklet that they got to cut out, color, fill out, and put together. And then we can't forget about the books. Because The Good and the Beautiful is a literary based program, which is something that I love, there are plenty of books that are suggested to use with the science units. So I ended up buying a couple books directly off their website, and then I sourced some books off of Amazon. I purchased brand new as well as some of the used books, which that's something that I love that Amazon does, is that you don't have to buy brand new books, that you can buy used books and they're sent directly to your door. And also the library is a really good place to also source some of your books if you don't want to spend extra money on them. Moving on to history, I ended up buying the year 1 course book. Now, from what I understand, The Good and the Beautiful is going to be revising their history books, so they are still available on their website, but with limited stock. Once items are sold out, they will not be replenishing them. But we did end up doing year 1 this last year. It came with the course book and a big book of history stories, and then I also bought some of the suggested read aloud books for each unit. And it also comes with the Keys of History board game, which was a really fun way to solidify some of the facts that we were learning through the course. With the history course, there are these printable student journals that I printed off for the girls. So there are little worksheets that are incorporated into the lessons, and then I just put them in these little plastic folders. This one for Avery, which is grades 1 through 3, and then this one for Aaliyah, which is grades 4 through 6. I had a really hard time finding a history course that I wanted to use, and what ultimately drew me to The Good and the Beautiful's history is that it is broken down into 4 units, and each unit teaches a different period in our history. So it's not just one drawn out time period that you spend all year learning, and by the time you're done with it, you're kind of bored. So for example, year 1 of The Good and the Beautiful's history goes through unit 1, which is ancient history, unit 2, which is the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, unit 3 is the French and Indian War through the Revolutionary War, and then unit 4 is the Victorian era, the history of flight, and the Cold War era. Their history is broken down into 4 years, and each year has different time periods in the timeline. And then by the time you're done with all 4 years, you will have learned every part of the timeline from the very beginning to now. My one complaint about the Good and the Beautiful's history is that it was kind of dry to me. There was a lot of reading, and I do love that The Good and the Beautiful is literary based, but some of the reading in here was kind of dry, and the girls were just not as interested in it. They did like the stories that were in the big book of history stories, and they did like the read alouds that we did, but they just were not as captivated by some of the lessons. Now these lessons do also have some audio recordings that you can listen to, and those were pretty interesting. I'm just really curious to see what they're going to do with the new revisions of history, because I do really like how this course is laid out. I just was not in love with some of the lessons. As I said before, the girls really love art. That is something that is always being done in our house, is some sort of art project, whether it's drawing, painting, photography, coloring, building, I don't know. There's always some sort of art project going on. Even though the language arts course goes through some of the art study, I wanted to teach the girls this year just the basics, the elements of art. And so I was able to find the living art lessons of the 7 elements, which is done by Master Books. This was a really thorough course on the 7 elements of art, which is lines, shapes, color, value, texture, form, and space. I figured if the girls are going to be doing so much art, they really should know like the basics of art. We are only halfway through this course, and we will be continuing this into next year. But this did come with the course book as well as the student art journals. If I were to do this over again, I would get the course book, and I would only get 1 student journal, and I would print out the pages in here. This is full of activities that go along with each of the lessons, and as you can see, we've done some of them in here. What I liked about this art course is not only did it teach about the elements, but within each element or subject, I guess, it taught about a particular artist. And so for instance, this one is teaching about Vincent van Gogh, and then at the end they got to do a bigger art project. My goal for the end of the school year was to compile all their big art projects and do a little art show, but because we didn't get through this course all the way, we didn't really have that many art projects from this course. We still might do a mini art show and maybe throw in some other art that they've been doing throughout the year just for fun. But I thought that would be a fun thing to do with this because there are some pretty good activities in here. So if any of you have been wanting to teach art as a subject in your homeschool, I really suggest checking this book out. I like to incorporate games in our homeschool. Some days we just play games all day, which is also known as game schooling. Just trying to have fun because kids really do learn through play. The Good and the Beautiful knows that. They incorporate games within some of their lessons. I have a few games here that we like to use that I'll share with you. The first one being Money Bags, which is a coin counting game. This one is more for Avery, just to help boost up her coin counting skills. Elia really likes to play this too, and a lot of times I catch them playing this outside of school time. Also for math, I have a dice game by Think Fun. It comes with a 12-sided dice and then 5 6-sided dice. The object of the game is that you roll this dice. Whatever it lands on, you try to make the equation for it. So for instance, if you landed on a number 5, you could use 3 plus 3 equals 6 minus 1 equals 5. Each dice that you get equals a point towards your score. We also use Yahtzee for math. This card game, Sleeping Queens, this one does require you to do some math problems within it. Dragonwood as well, you have to add up dice. Another game geared more towards Avery is Silly Sentences. It is what it says. They build silly sentences. When Avery has this out, Aaliyah has to get involved, of course, because they want to battle who can come up with the most silly sentence. Like I said before, The Good and the Beautiful does incorporate geography into their language arts lessons. But this year, I wanted the girls to focus on learning about the United States geography. So I ended up getting the Game of States, and this one, which is our favorite, is the Scrambled States of America. This one's a blast. It's a lot of fun. This one's a little bit more geared towards Avery. When Aaliyah and Avery play this one, Aaliyah has a little bit of an upper hand because she's older, but this one I like because it can be tailored. So we can make it a little bit easier for Avery, or we can make it a little bit more challenging for Aaliyah. We like the Guess in 10 games. This one is countries of the world. This one the girls have not quite mastered. They're still kind of learning it, but one of our favorites is the animal ones. I don't have it here to show you today because they are on a road trip today and they took it with them to play in the car. But any of the Guess in 10 games are really great for a game schooling day. And then lastly, we like to play Quirkle, which is a fun little strategy game. I'll have the Good and the Beautiful's website linked in the description below if you want to check them out. I highly recommend it. They do have downloads that are free, so if you're not wanting to purchase the actual product, you can download those. They have a really great library with tons of well-written books. So all the things that I'm showing you today will be linked in the description below. All of the workbooks and the games that we like to use. So check those out if you are interested. I hope you enjoyed today's video and that it gave you a little bit of an insight of what The Good and the Beautiful is about. I highly recommend them. We thoroughly enjoyed using their curriculum.